of the local community, and how grassroots are really all instrumental in your funding application. So just before I go into the three different funds specifically, Comic Relief do have quite a focus of their funding. So they don't just fund any community project. That you need to be applying for one of their 4 themes. And their 4 themes are Children Survive and Thrive. Now this is children under the age of 5, which always sometimes gets people. So it's any project that's supporting children under the age of 5, and Comic Relief are very keen that children get the best start in life. That's why they've chosen that age group. There's Fighting for Gender Justice, which are any projects that are aimed at improving the equality for women, girls, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, and any initiatives that are going to help people that are affected by domestic abuse or violence or exploitation. Then the next theme is A Safe Place to Be, which is Comic Relief's homelessness theme, and it's projects that will support people who are rebuilding their lives due to homelessness or forced migration. And finally, we've got Mental Health Matters, which are projects that support good mental health in communities. So those are their 4 themes, and when you are writing the application, it asks you on the application form how you are going, which of the 4 themes you've chosen. You do have to choose one, because we sometimes get projects which cross over. You've just got to have a think about which one is the one that you're definitely focused on, and then you have to say how your project is going to tackle that theme. I'm going to talk now about the capacity building grant. So that's the £1,000 grant. It used to be 500, but they've upped it to 1,000 in sort of response to the COVID crisis. The thinking being that quite a lot of organisations have really struggled during the COVID crisis, either because they've lost a lot of revenue or that they've very much had to change their ways of working. And so this capacity building grant is there to help organisations to increase their capacity, so that they build sort of better organisational structures and they're more resilient in the future. So it can be used for any sort of one-off sort of project which is really going to help your organisation or your group sort of get into a better sort of position in the future. So it might be something like building a new website or creating some new policies and procedures, maybe doing some training for staff or volunteers or even board members, maybe putting in place some sort of policies like a new social media policy or a new plan of action and things like that. So that's the capacity building grant, and that's £1,000 up to £1,000. The next fund is the project delivery grant, and for this one you can apply up to £4,000. Put an example one there on the slide, but this is anything. It could be a capital project, a revenue project, a combination of the two. It could be, say, a gardening project aimed at improving people's mental health, or it might be parenting classes for parents of the under 5s. It might be some sort of employment project for people who are at risk of homelessness. So anything, it has to be delivered within 12 months. So all the project delivery has to happen within 12 months of you receiving the grant. And it can be used for things like room hire. It can be used for paying staff time to deliver the project, or as I said, it can be used for capital. So if you did, say, for example, a gardening project, it could be used to build the raised beds that you're then going to work with the groups to develop. And it can be used for a combination of those two as well. The next one is, oh, hold on, let me go to the COVID-19 Community Fund. So this is a brand new fund. It was only released, I think, 2 weeks ago. And it's aimed at supporting, again, grassroots organisations to either respond to the needs of vulnerable individuals during the COVID crisis, or either to help them recover and develop organisational resilience during the COVID-19 crisis. So again, it's a £4,000 grant. This one's got a slightly shorter time frame. So they want applications in before December this year, and I would recommend, if you are thinking of applying, apply sooner rather than later, because once the funding, this set of funding has been used up, it will be closed. So it might get closed early if we get enough applications in earlier. And projects have to be delivered before February next year. So it's really seen this one as a very short-term project, which is going to really help people during the current crisis and to respond to it. And they said on the website that they are particularly interested in receiving applications from charities support the BAME communities and the LGBT, I'm not put that, should we say, and the LGBTQIA communities that have been disproportionately affected by the COVID crisis. So if you've got a project for those two communities, then this might be a good one to apply for. There's quite a lot of restrictions from this, so who can apply. So it's very much aimed, as I keep saying, at grassroots organisations, which is why they have put a limit on the annual income of organisations that can apply. They don't want the big national charities to apply. They want the little community and local organisations. You have to have an income of under 250,000, and then you also need to be a not-for-profit voluntary or community organisation. And then it's also the usual restrictions. You can't be promoting a religious cause or a political cause, and you need to have 2 unrelated signatories to your bank accounts. Can't apply if you're an individual. You must have a constitution and a governing document. For this funding as well, schools and local authorities aren't eligible to apply for this funding. It's only groups like community groups or voluntary groups, CICs, social enterprises, that sort of organisation. You also can't apply for funding for anything that you charge beneficiaries for. So anything you apply for must be free to the beneficiaries who are going to benefit from the project. It's also on the guidance notes, it says you can't apply for overhead costs, but I always think that's a little bit, it's a bit more nuanced than that. So you can't apply for just general overhead costs, but you can apply for any overhead costs associated with your project. And then for the COVID-19 fund, they've actually been a little bit more lenient. So they say that you can apply for ongoing costs, but that can't be the full application. You can't just apply for lost revenue that you've sort of suffered during the current crisis, or for just ongoing costs. It needs to be some sort of response to the COVID crisis, but you can apply for a certain degree of that, as long as that's not your whole project. The application process is all online, so this is the website you need to visit, and Natalie, I'm sure I'll be able to send out a copy of this presentation to people, and you've recorded it as well, so don't worry if you don't have time to write down a note of it. And then at the bottom of this web page there's these 3 boxes, and those are the 3 different grants. So we've got the capacity building grant, I think it says grants of up to 500, but that's actually changed to 1,000. We've got the project delivery grants, and this last one has become the COVID-19 grants. This is my top tips for making your application a success. So a lot of groups don't succeed with this funding because they don't they don't give enough detail in their application. So when you come to apply for this fund, make sure you mention exactly what you'll do with the fund. Don't just say, we'll set up a gardening club. Say, we'll set up a gardening club, it's going to meet so many hours every week. We're hoping this many people will get involved in it. There's going to be a trained person running it. So we need a little bit more detail. They like to see the meat on the bones, and so they know that the project is going to be a success when you put in the application. Make sure that you mention the lived experience of the beneficiaries, to make sure you're really showing how they've been involved in the project. You don't need to, some people get a bit confused, you don't need to tell like a sob story for all your beneficiaries. What we want to know is that the beneficiaries have really been involved with developing the project. It's not just some charity that's come along and said, oh, I know what you need gardening clubs. It's really the local people have said, what we really want is gardening clubs, and it's them that have driven the project, and it's them that want it, and they've sort of decided when it's going to take place and what time of day works best for them. So really it needs to show how they've been involved in developing the project. And then also where people fall short sometimes is the sustainability or the legacy. So Current Relief don't want to give you 12 months of funding and then after 12 months it all shuts down and nothing's going to ever happen again. They want to know that the project is in some way you're going to sustain it. You might be, at the end of the project, you might be signposting people to other projects, or the project might develop a support group of its own which carries on, or you may just be looking at other funding. You can just say, well, we've identified these other sources of funding and we're going to apply to them to make sure the project is sustainable. So there's a little bit more information there on some other web pages that might help. There's Jenna and me, so we are the local, it says Bags of Help, should say Comment Relief Enablers, and our job is to oversee the projects, support the application process and support projects. So anything, if you have any questions when you're filling in the application, we're more than happy to help. These are our contact details. We're happy if you want a second pair of eyes to read through your application, we're happy to read through a draft and tell you if there's anything we think you need to tweak to mean you're more likely to get funding. And we're just there as a local resource for groups. I think Comment Relief are very aware that they're very keen for little groups and local organisations to apply, and they don't want those groups who've never applied for funding to feel overwhelmed.